And away we go. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, wherever you happen to be in the world today. Welcome, one and all, to Coffee Talk. That's right, it is time for Coffee Talk, where we will be reading through some news articles, having some discussion, having a lot of opinion, quite frankly. I have to say that a lot of opinion about what is going on in the world today as we take a look at the mess that we call life. Unfortunately, life isn't so bad, it's the people that are in it. Isn't that about how it works? Joined today by five felines. I have five in the room. Five in the room. Can you spot some of them for those of you who are watching? And of course, you can find me live on YouTube Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on at Coffee Talk Live or at Prepper University, simultaneously broadcasting on both channels, as well as at Coffee Talk Chat on X, formerly known as Twitter, and Fistful of Radio, there it is, .com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon as we get ready to dive into this. And naturally, as always, I read through as many of the comments as is reasonable. And I'll go ahead and acknowledge some of the people that have joined us in the live portion here thus far. I see Donna Beaver is here, who reminds us to please do thumbs up, like, and share. Naturally, if you don't mind, I would greatly appreciate it. Helter is here. Dragon is here. Element is here, says he'll be listening while at work. And which is why I read the comments, because, a lot of people are just listening and can't see what's going on. Brian is here, Bingo, and Urban Angst. Anyone found those cats yet? All five of the indoor cats are in this room, which is unique because typically it's not more than four because Miss Kitty doesn't associate with other cats. She hates them. You can see Miss Kitty sleeping in the chair. Dusty sleeping right above her. Then on the floor here, there's Uncle. Hi, Uncle. And then sitting, oh, can you even see it? I'll go this way. There's Daniel, and there is Miss Granny Smith sleeping on the boxes. So yeah, full house here today. Full house here today. Very rare to have all of them in one place. Like I said, Miss Kitty doesn't like any of them, so she usually stays away from wherever they are. I see Boogers has joined us here today. Glad you could make it as we get ready to dive in to what is going on in the world today. And there's a lot going on in the world today. And we'll jump around. We're going to start in New York. One of the biggest stories out there, unfortunately, is the migrant industrial complex. The migrant industrial complex, not just in the United States, but all over the Western world, this is going on. But I'm in the U.S., so I'll talk about that primarily. And here we go, New York Post article. New York's booming underground migrant economy exposes the true disaster of Biden's open border. As we're being joined here by Rodney in New Zealand. Rodney, did you see the roster? All five of the cats are sleeping in here. And into the article, immigration policies that admit vast numbers of low-skilled workers are a plague on Americans in low-skilled jobs, warned the late, great Barbara Jordan, the Texas congresswoman who chaired President Bill Clinton's Immigration Commission back in the 90s. Open borders make a welfare state unworkable, warned America's leading socialist, Senator Bernie Sanders. Golly, Bernie Sanders, huh? I mean, he's about as wet as it comes. Before he started towing the new Democratic Party line amid his 2016 presidential run. Oh, he said that before, when it counted then for a different reason, because people like that blow in the wind. Warnings fully vindicated by the Post's Isabel Vincent's deep dive into the city's cash-based underground migrant economy. Migrants from Africa and Latin America, many, if not most, with little English, are taking underground jobs as food delivery drivers, construction day laborers, cooks, and cleaners. Some illegally use others' work papers or fake IDs to work legally. Others find employees willing to hire off the books so they can pay less. And I'm like, how do you get a fake ID anymore? I can't get a fake ID. How the hell do these people get a fake ID? And some run illegal businesses as street vendors selling to other asylum seekers or as quasi beggars vending candy on the subway. I can see a lot of them as beggars because many of them we've talked about before come from cultures where begging is like a job. You see it all over Europe, you see it all over the Middle East, you see it all over Africa. And some, I read that, not to mention those dealing drugs, shoplifting, and so on. In the wake of the migrant attack on cops in Times Square, it's plain the city is now hosting some new migrant crime gangs. Don't blame the left. Moderate Democrats like Eric Adams are failing on the migrant crisis. With a wink from the Biden administration, they broke the law to come here. How surprising is it that they'd keep breaking the law now that they've arrived? Especially when prosecutors like Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg can't even manage to enforce the law against migrants who assault police officers. And we saw that video last week. Someone had questioned in the comment section, how do we know the police didn't assault that person? It's my understanding that the group continued to become aggressive, so they grabbed him. And this is a copy of part of that video from like a traffic camera or something. So they got hold of the guy in the yellow jacket, and then everyone rushed in and attacked the police for grabbing him. And it just escalated from there. So now, I mean, they're being forced to acknowledge that, yeah, having people in here that are completely unvetted, you don't know really where they're from, where they're going. They can't be here legally. They can't work legally. You're going to have trouble. You're going to have crime. They're going to form gangs. They're going to interfere with the infrastructure, and they're not going to adhere to the laws. They're not going to learn the language. No kidding, it's a problem. This is why, traditionally, if they don't have a legitimate reason for coming here, they get turned away. That's what's supposed to happen. That's what most countries do. Not in the West, unfortunately. That's not what Australia does anymore. That's not what the UK does anymore. That's not what anyone under the European Union's influence does anymore, or Canada, or the United States for that matter. Semper Fi's joined us here today, as well as Zane. And Zane wants to know, did anyone see we're going to war in the Middle East again? Yeah, I know. It's been coming a long time, even before the whole bit with Israel. It's because we left too much unfinished there. They don't have any respect for the United States. And you're going to have to keep going back until you settle it right. Urban says you may start in New York, but it's all going in the direction of the Clapham alkaline attack in the UK. There are numerous street videos showing local homeless people complaining about the migrant homeless. You know it's bad when even the bench bums are complaining about immigrants. Good point. Rodney says the flood of illegals is an extremely effective way to destroy the culture of Western nations and thereby destroy the nations themselves. Exactly. And Dragon says, oh, yay, more underpaid slave workers to finally erode the little power the working class had left. I want to know where they're getting fake papers and fake IDs. You know how hard that is now? This ain't the 60s. You know, this isn't what from like back in the days when a driver's license didn't even have a photo on it. Who's old enough to remember that? As we shift around here, still in New York, let's go ahead and make things worse. Why don't we, Eric Adams? And this is from Tag 24 News. This is a local story. You may not see this one. New York City to give migrants prepaid credit cards as the border crisis continues. Oh, that's an idea. Let's just give them prepaid credit cards. Do these people look like they came from South America? Just asking. Just asking. Willing to bet they didn't. The city of New York will now work with Mobility Capital Finance on a pilot program that will provide migrants that arrive at Roosevelt Hotel with a prepaid credit card, accounting according to the New York Post. The card is to be used strictly for food. The amount each recipient will receive on their immediate response card depends on the size of the family and income status. What's their income status? How about freaking zero since they're illegal immigrants? How's that for an income status? How about nada? The move comes as Texas Governor Greg Abbott continues to send buses filled with migrants to Democrat-run cities across the U.S. as a protest against the federal government's failure to address the border crisis. Oh, so it's Greg Abbott's fault. I see. New York City is now home to some 66,000 migrants, with 1,500 arriving last week, and the funds being used to help them are estimated to reach $10 billion by 2025. The city has declared a state of emergency for all the good it'll do. A spokesperson for New York City Mayor Eric Adams claimed the credit card program is expected to save the city more than $600,000 per month, or more than $7.2 million annually. All right, hold on a minute. Now, all of these programs are outsourced now. The states used to run these programs themselves. Basically, they're talking about giving these people a SNAP card. Most of you know what that is, okay? It's a food stamp card, all right? They partnered with Mobility Capital Finance, which means they're not producing or monitoring or working these cards themselves, which means that Mobility Capital Finance is getting a cut, all right? They got to be paid to do it. They're not going to do it for free for the city of New York or the state of New York out of the kindness of their hearts. You're not going to save money on this program. How are you saving money? I mean, you're already providing meals for these people and they're throwing them away because food's not good enough. All right. We covered that story like a month ago. They're throwing away record amounts of food. It's disgusting. I have a big pet peeve about food being thrown away. So now you're going to give them the equivalent of a SNAP card, which they're not going to call it a SNAP card. They're going to call it an immediate response card. Pay Mobility Capital Finance to maintain those cards. Oh, but it'll be okay because the card is to be used strictly for food. You mean like how the SNAP cards are used strictly for food? You know how easy that is to get around? For those of you who are not in the know, I will explain this to you, okay? Because my ex used to do this. Not a practice that I condone at all. I hated that she used to deal with people like this because some of them were pretty scummy. My ex used to do this, okay? Any SNAP card is worth 50 cents on the dollar. That's the going rate as far as I understand it. So you have a SNAP card. It's got $500 on it to be used strictly for food. You find somebody, you hang around in front of the supermarket or whatever. Hey, do you want to buy my food stamp card? It's got 500 on it. Give me 250 in cash and I'll let you use it. Right? So you either go in with them, they hang around with you while you shop, or they tell you the code and then wait for you outside to get their card back. And you use their card for 50 cents on the dollar. People do it all the time. Okay? It's a very common practice. And it's a way that people rip off the welfare system that your tax dollars are paying for. Like I said, my ex used to do it. I used to hate it. Like, don't do that shit, please. I used to hate that. And Rodney made a donation to the channel. He says, here's a couple of bucks for those kitties. Thank you very much, Rodney. Need all the help I can get. We're running low on food, actually. I've got a stockpile of food again because it's running out. We're using probably going through about 2.5 pounds a day because we're taking care of 13 right now. So much appreciated, Rodney. Thank you very much. Semper Fi says the sanctuary city leaders are making it worse. Everyone will be paying for their mistakes. People need to stand up, vote them out. Enough is enough. Zane says the largest group of illegal immigrants is coming into the U.S. Is the Chinese because their economy is tanking. And we're actually getting to that here in a minute. Urban says Mobility Capital Finance is not even a proper name. It would be interesting to see where the real funding is coming from. They know that those credit cards will never be paid back, so who's paying? It's not really a credit card. It's like a debit card that taps into an account set up. There's a main account, and it trickles into a multitude of separate accounts that are attached to each individual card. And the big account drops money to the limit of whatever is set for the smaller accounts. Like when any business that uses a debit card to pay their employees instead of a check, it's the same concept, but you've got to pay a system to operate that. And it used to be the state would operate it itself. When they first started rolling out snap cards, the state paid for that. The state set it up themselves. Massachusetts was like one of the first states to do that. Just give a little history here. One of the first states to do that in the 90s. And when you used that card, when you swiped it, you had to show an ID. And it was a state issued ID from the Department of Public Welfare. It looked like a traditional ID or driver's license, but the markings were different. And so you would swipe it, and then you would show the card so that they could identify that it was you. So that if you did sell your stamps, you'd have to be there at least. You couldn't wait in the wings or wait outside for the people to use it and just give them your code. It was a way to try to crack down on that, which the Department of Public Welfare has never been able to do. They've never been able to control it. All People has joined us. Glad you could make it, All People, as I prattle on. And Helter says, expect New York City property taxes to skyrocket. Yeah, it'll end up like Los Angeles. And for more city-issued fines to be handed out to citizens, somebody has to pay for this, and it's always going to be taxpayers. And No Name says, we finance colonies of brown people and ghetto blacks who are here to replace us and mix with us. I mean, I can see the argument, but it's not just blacks and ghetto or brown people and ghetto blacks. There's a lot of people who are doing this. I used to see a lot of white people, really scummy looking white people, selling the stamps too. It takes all kinds. Let's just put it that way. Dragon says, imagine if they treated our own citizens and homeless people in the city with this much respect. And also, when you just give things to people, when you just give people whatever they want and they don't earn it, they don't have any respect for what you give them, which is why these migrants are throwing their food in the trash that is being paid for and catered by the state of New York at the taxpayer expense to the tune of hundreds of thousands and even millions of dollars. Zane says they would give a SNAP card holder half the value to spend it on food. Yeah, I mean, basically, like I said, the going rate is 50 cents on the dollar. If I had $500 on a SNAP card and I wanted to sell it, I couldn't ask more than $250 because nobody's going to pay it. But they'll pay 50 cents on the dollar for it to save on their groceries. Urban says accountants just love accounts that trickle. Yeah, no kidding. As we shift around here, and this has been exposed in the border bill, and this is big news, and we're going to get to China here in a minute because that did come up. Fox News, and I saw the same story on several channels. It doesn't matter who it is. Senate border bill says non-Mexican children won't be counted in migrant total to trigger mandatory shutdown, because that's part of the proposed package that Biden is trying to push through to get his $68 billion. I think it's 68, correct, for the Ukraine, and a few dollars here and there for this and that, and a couple of billion for the border, because he needs the tools. He's been telling people, quote, or paraphrasing a quote, I've been telling them since my first day in office that the border is broken and that something needs to be done. Yeah, you're the one that did this, Biden. Thank you. Says the Senate bipartisan $118 billion border security and foreign aid package. Foreign aid package, that's your problem right there. Foreign aid package includes a stipulation that the unaccompanied minors not originally from Mexico would not be included in the total number of migrant encounters tallied in the 5,000 weekly average that would trigger an emergency authority to shut down the border. American First Legal, a conservative group, brought attention specifically to page 212 and 213 of the package. The new break glass emergency authority is a disaster. The secretary may use it if there are 4,000 or more aliens encountered each day. That's 28,000 a week, 121,000 a month, 1.46 million a year, but he must use it when there are more than 5,000 a day over a week, or 8,500 in a single day. And those are insane numbers, but it gets worse. It gets worse. At the 7-day rolling average of 5,000 encounters a day, or 8,500 encounters in a single day, the Department of Homeland Security must use the mandatory activation and is required to shut the border down and turn away anyone who crosses. According to the legislative proposal, no new asylum seekers would be allowed, and anybody crossing would be removed, putting an end to the notion that any migrant who makes it on U.S. soil would need to be processed. Under the bill, Border Patrol would not process illegal border crossers, and they would be removed. And there's a big however in here. There's a big however in here. I'm looking for it real quick so I don't have to read like 50 paragraphs. Basically, it says the bill says no unaccompanied minors can be removed, and some of the minors will receive attorneys, either pro bono or taxpayer funded. There is also a provision in the bill that would allow the president to suspend the shutdown authority for up to 45 days at a time if deemed best for national interest. So the bill proposal says that there could be a shutdown, or shutdown should be initiated. This is what they want. This is what Biden's trying to push to get his $118 billion so he can throw it away overseas. Because almost all the money's leaving the country. Again, 68 billion of it is going to the Ukraine, apparently. That if it reaches over 5,000 in a day, the border should be closed, but he can veto that and force them to keep it open anyway. So what the hell is the point? What the hell is the point of having something in there to stopgap or break the glass, as it were, on the border to prevent people from continuing to cross, if you're just shutting it down for the day, number one, and if number two, jackass can veto it for 45 more days at a time, because the veto can go in a 45-day stretch. And then what? You stop it again, and then he vetoes it again. That proposal is completely unacceptable. It's insane. It's absolutely insane. All People says wants to know if I can do a special on Carlos Slim, the Mexican Lebanese billionaire funding the Obama phones and the migrant caravans with George Soros. I can look into it. Excuse me. And Helter says Trump had no problem controlling the borders. No new legislation was required. No, because the laws are already there. People are coming that don't have a legitimate claim. You repatriate them. You put them on a bus or you put them on a plane and send them back where they came from. It's not cheap, but it costs a hell of a lot less than what we're spending now. The amount of money that's being hemorrhaged from taxpayers at this point far outweighs putting them on a bus or a plane and sending them back, especially when you're talking about that the majority of people crossing the border at this point are not even from south of the border. They're not even Mexicans. They're not even Hondurans or Guatemalans or Ecuadorians anymore. A very small amount of them are actually from the south. And again, and I've made this argument, at least when they come from south of the border, they're willing to work. And that's why I pointed out, I want to ask you again, when's the last time you saw a bunch of people from Saudi Arabia shingling a roof? When's the last time you saw a bunch of people from Lebanon doing your landscaping? How many people from Guyana do you see standing in the parking lot in front of Home Depot at 5 a.m. looking for pickup work? It's always people from south of the border. Always. It's at least they'll work. Seriously. At least they have a work ethic. A lot of the people coming from the rest of the world, they freaking don't. They just don't. They come in here for a handout, and they're getting it. I mean, if they were coming here and contributing, I couldn't say too much, but they're not. They're just not. Urban says we have to let more people through to let fewer people through. It's the math and it's complicated. Yeah, I know that's Common Core math for you. Nature Nerd says, "What a joke! 5,000 a day is unacceptable. What is wrong with Congress to even bring this to the floor?" And Donna says, "I'd rather 5,000 a day or more sent home." Yeah, and it would be cheaper than all of this. We can't afford this. How much longer before they completely cripple our infrastructure? And it's our own lawmakers doing it. It's our own lawmakers doing it because they could stop it. They could stop it, but the Border Patrol's hands have been tied. And they're just going to do their job. They're going to follow those orders. That's why Governor Abbott is having the fight now, putting the National Guard out there and having the federal government challenge him and telling them, yeah, make me. I totally get it. I totally get that. It's a huge problem, and it's not going away. And again, the majority of these people, they're coming from Africa, they're coming from the Middle East, they're coming from all over Asia, and particularly China recently. And that ties in with this next article that's going to be popping up here in a moment as we jump to the border. And I don't mean Taco Bell either. Run to the border. CBS News says Chinese migrants now the fastest growing group trying to cross into the U.S. And we read an article on this a few months back, actually, last year, a few months ago, that they had it like something. I might be off on my numbers a little bit, but I seem to remember that it was about 24,000 border crosses inside of a month or something from People's Republic of China. And they were astounded because they said that's more than we've gotten in 10 years, all in a one short period. What the hell is up with that? Well, here they come. Here they come. And now they're forced to admit it, as the article reads, if it'll hold still. Come on now. After China's prolonged and strict C virus lockdown destroyed her businesses, a woman decided to leave her two young children with family to travel to Mexico and cross into the U.S. through a hole in the border. She's far from alone. What hole? A hole in the border? The whole border's open. She's far from alone. Chinese migrants are the fastest growing group trying to cross into the U.S. from Mexico. Last year, U.S. Customs and Border Protection reported 37,000 Chinese citizens were apprehended as they illegally crossed the border. That's 50 times more than 2 years earlier. It's more than that. It's more than that. And again, these are just the ones that are caught. Many of the migrants say they made the journey to escape China's increasingly repressive political climate and sluggish economy. The mom, through a translator, told 60 Minutes that what motivated her was more than economic reasons and could be summed up in one word: freedom, she said. Oh, please. Yeah, that's what she's going to tell you. For all we know, she's a damn spy. I'm sorry. We don't know. I mean, we're talking about a country where people are mostly brainwashed into staunchly being state-oriented. That very firmly they'll fight to the death for the state. It's drilled into them from childhood, their whole lives. It's hammered into them, much like the social bullshit is being hammered into our kids in the West now. But for them, it's patriotism to the Chinese government that's hammered into them. And how'd she afford to get here in the first place? Migrants, undeterred by policies designed to reduce illegal entries, have been crossing the U.S.-Mexico border in unprecedented numbers. Now, stop right there. Who wrote this article? CBS News. Migrants undeterred by policies designed to reduce illegal entries. What policies? They're not being enforced. They haven't been enforced since Biden took office. That's why it's out of control now. That's why it's out of control at this point. Last year, U.S. Customs and Border Protection recorded 2.5 million instances of detaining or turning away people attempting to cross into the United States from Mexico. How many were actually turned away versus detaining them? I'm having a hard time swallowing that, considering what we've been seeing the last few years. The Gap is a global destination littered with travel documents from around the world. With the help of a translator, 60 Minutes met some of the Chinese migrants coming through, including a teacher, a banker, some small business owners, and a factory worker. Unlike the migrants who make the grueling journey through Central America, some middle-class migrants from China arrive with rolling bags. Some say they took flights all the way to Mexico. Yeah, that's how most people are getting there. How do you think they're getting there from all over the world? Do you think they're swimming to South America? A canoe, a rowboat, maybe? How do you think they got there? How do you think all these people from Africa and the Middle East and everywhere else got to South America? Just asking. I mean, seriously. Water wings. Many flew from China to Ecuador because it doesn't require a visa for Chinese nationals. Then they fly to Tijuana. The migrants say they connected with smugglers and paid $400 for an hour-long drive to the Gap at the border. Okay. Ecuador, you don't need a passport to land there, but if you don't have a reason to be in Ecuador, they'll fleece you because they'll charge you a fee. These immigrants that are coming through in Ecuador, they don't tell you that part in the article. Oh my God. Let me catch up some of the comments here. Nature Nerd says 60 Minutes made a video on how Chinese migrants, fastest growing group crossing U.S. border. The poor guy has 3,000 people a day trashing his lawn, and they confiscated his gun unconstitutionally. Interesting. Urban says when it comes to Chinese migrants, Canada has the system perfected already. We call them the student and homemaker combo, acting as proxies for the actual foreign buyer who's never even seen in person. And Sven says we have an infrastructure set up just for Chinese illegals, hotels, compounds, and transportation set up just for them. Which NGO are we paying for that? And Nature Nerd says in the 60 Minutes video, they said they can't turn anyone back without passports. That is complete nonsense. Turn people back with passports, but not ones without one is bullshit backwards. Yeah, they you can't trust it. They can't turn anybody away. That's what the Border Patrol has been told by the federal government, by the executive branch. You can't turn anybody away except in extreme circumstances. They can act like they're doing their jobs, but they're really not. Everybody knows this by now. That's why there's so much conflict at Eagle Pass. That's why there's so much conflict with Governor Greg Abbott. We all know we're being lied to. We all know it. And they continue on, the executive branch. This is the part that makes me sick about all of it, is that the federal government expects us to believe the lies. They lie constantly, knowing that they are lying to us and knowing that we don't believe them. And it doesn't stop or change. It does not stop or change. And that's really the scary part. That's the part that's most 1984-ish out of all of this. That's the part that's the most Orwellian. We know they're lying. They know we know. Nothing is done about it. No one dares say a thing. No one dares buck the system. You never know who's watching or listening. And people are afraid. People are afraid to speak their minds. And anyone who does speak their mind is punished for it at some level. You know, I did a short earlier today just showing my daily routine of requesting a review, because every live stream I do gets an automatic strike, period. It just does. And it didn't used to, but now when I request the manual review, the so-called manual review, which is basically just another damn bot, it will overturn the decision every time. So every strike is overturned, but this is a live stream. It's too late now. Who's going to watch it? You know, when you're days or a week later or however long, who's watching the live stream? Who's going back and watching the old ones? Maybe one or two people, but it's too late. It's too late. And it's not like I'm making any money. I'm not getting paid for this, not really. And the ad revenue is pathetic, quite frankly. But it's the principle of the thing. It's like, why are you doing that? To punish me. To punish me for what? Dragon says in 2020, when Biden just got elected, I jokingly told my friend who that it's easier to fly to Mexico and sneak back into America than apply for a job. Yeah, well, you'd be right at this point. And Robert says the new scam here in Seattle, people coming up to you and saying cash for gold necklaces, rings, and they are all fake. These people are coming from Canada and major theft vehicle ring break-ins. I've seen the jewelry scam too, and it's even stamped like 14 karat or something, 14K or whatever, and it turns out to be fake. I've seen a lot. I've seen that in Kansas, like when I was still living there 15 years ago. People coming up, hey, I need to sell this necklace. I things like that. Urban says in Canada there was a scandal about a year ago when Chinese pilots were being trained in the prairies and Chinese police stations operating in cities outside of local law enforcement. China. And Simon says, what would make you sick is that there are people that will still vote for this administration. This is the sickening part. If they actually are voting for it, because there's a lot of question about all of that. You already know, and I can't talk about it because then you're an election denier. And if you're an election denier, you're on the list. You'll get in trouble for even suggesting that something shady could have happened. 81 million votes. That's all I'm going to say. 81 million votes, ladies and gentlemen. Helter says the U.S. will probably continue to support immigrants whether we like it or not because it's actually one of its unique strengths that has worked since the colonial period. If they were willing to contribute, I mean, you had immigrants coming in the colonial period. They were coming here looking for work, especially during the Industrial Revolution, because this is where all the jobs were. And they wanted to work their way through something. These people are coming here looking for a handout. They're not contributing. They're not working. They're not learning the language, but they are living off the fat of the land of milk and honey. Sven says 5% harder for those that don't go along and 5% easier for those that go along. It's by design. And Monkey is joining us. Says they're a bit late. That's okay. That is okay. Glad you could make it. Now, this I thought was an interesting article. And this is a news article from a site called Thy, Thy, Thy Black Man. Thy Black Man. And I thought it was interesting because I've actually seen this. I've seen it in Atlanta and I've seen it in Kansas when I was still living there. It says, Black community confronting chaos, my personal encounters with LA's street takeovers. And it says, on 3 different occasions, I witnessed in person a street takeover. The first time, it was a block from my house. It was Sunday night near midnight. I went to the corner with a crowd which looked like a little UN of about 300 or 400 had gathered. I asked some of the participants why they were there, and they did not know or care that they were disturbing the residents and presented a clear and present danger to motorists. They gave me a blank look. The second time I witnessed the tail end of the deadly street takeover near Florence and Crenshaw that claimed the life of a motorist passing by at the time. The third time I publicly challenged the LAPD, LA County Sheriffs, and CHP, or CHIPS, at the corner of Century and Western Avenue in South LA to make the street takeover task force permanent. The perplexing question, which in one case went unanswered by the participants and that has confounded law enforcement, public officials, and community residents, is why street takeovers not only happen, but seemingly have gotten bigger, bolder, and more in the community and law enforcement's face in the past year. The other equally perplexing question is what can be done about them. And it says the starting point to answer the question is just who are the individuals that are involved in street takeovers and why. There has been no detained profile of the typical street takeover participant or their motive for participating. From my observation, they are mostly young, comprised of all ethnicities and even genders, and treat the street takeover as part thrill, part happening, part sense of momentary empowerment, and almost certainly part defiance of authority. And excuse the pauses there because the article's got a lot of bad syntax. I'm wondering if AI wrote this for thy black man, and I'm making corrections as I go. And as far as the street takeovers, he says it's all ethnicities, whatever. Every street takeover I've ever seen, everybody was black. Most of them were young, male and female, but primarily pretty much everybody was black. I've seen it again in Topeka, Kansas, several times, and I've seen it in Atlanta a few times. And it's like people are just out. There's dozens or even hundreds of people standing around on the sidewalk and out in the street, yelling and talking and playing music. And if God forbid you got to drive through there, they won't move. And sometimes it can result in violence. So this is a bit misleading in that he states that it's all ethnicities. I haven't seen it that way. Maybe it's different in Los Angeles, giving the benefit of the doubt. And I also would agree that they really don't know what they're doing. They have no purpose being out there. There's no reason. Primarily deeply urban areas, poverty type areas, usually adjacent to housing projects, is where I have seen that. Assuming a lot of these people don't work. I guess they're just bored sitting in front of their free cable all day, and they go outside and they stand around, and the crowd just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And of course, you get a big crowd of people with nothing to do. You know, idle hands are the devil's workshop, as they say. You end up with violence and other problems. Excuse me. Robert says they're going into Panama. Why the DHS are surveilling over the ocean with planes. They are coming in by ships 40 days from China. And Nature Nerd says anyone from Venezuela, China, Russia, Nicaragua, and El Salvador needs to be deported. They're all communist criminals that hate the West. Zane says Sweden recently cut all immigrants off the welfare and now forcing them to learn the local language. That would help. And Carrick is here. Glad you could make it, Carrick. A couple more comments here. Robert says a lot of these scams and ripoffs are Chinese East Indians coming out of Canada. They let in major issues without vetting them. In turn, they come to the States. Fentanyl is the top of the bucket. And Urban says the street and shopping mall takeover in Miami was all just space aliens, remember? Oh, yeah, that must be it. And Rodney, excuse me, says the phrase, as I recall, is idle hands do the devil's work. Yeah, you might be right. I might be misquoting it. Dragon says this is a result of broken homes and requiring both parents to work. Society is better when parents can be home to discipline versus letting the public school system do it. Yeah, to a point. I mean, but I've also seen a lot of adults out there as well. It's not all teenagers, you know, and you can go to any of these videos. There's a lot of them on YouTube, actually, driving through the worst neighborhoods in the United States, and you'll go through some of those housing project areas, and you'll see hundreds of people just standing out on the sidewalk, not doing anything. And a good, fair portion of them are adults. Bingo says, what the hell? I guess my comment is suppressed again. Oh, you had another comment that disappeared? Way to go, ScrewTube. Oppressing people's viewpoints again, I see. That's what they do. That's what they do. Oh, this is something that I thought was interesting. A moment of celebration, ladies and gentlemen. A moment of celebration. One more comment. We'll get into it. Helter says, I'm continually amazed these kids eventually have the resources to willfully do damage to their cars for fun. But here we go. A moment of celebration for everybody's favorite First Lady, Michelle Obama. And this is an article from The Hill. Michelle Obama wins her second Grammy. She wins her second Grammy Award, ladies and gentlemen. Aw, another Grammy handed to Botox Queen here. If she had any more Botox in her face, my God, she looks like a mannequin. Michelle Obama is a two-time Grammy Award winner, besting other high-profile nominees, including Senator Bernie Sanders and Meryl Streep. Oh, my God. I'm sorry. Bernie Sanders is up for a Grammy nomination, and Meryl Streep. And of course, by the way, the Grammy nomination is for dramatic reading. Okay. The former First Lady took home a Grammy on Sunday during the awards pre-show in the Best Audiobook Narration and Storytelling Recording category for the audiobook of her 2022 self-help style memoir, The Light We Carry. In addition to the 2020 Democratic presidential candidate and Little Women star Streep, nominees in the category included actor William Shatner and veteran music producer Rick Rubin. Obama's first won a Grammy in the spoken word album category for the narration of her 2020 bestseller, Becoming. Does anybody have a copy of these books? Because you know it doesn't mean shit to be on the bestsellers list. We've talked about this before. People get on the New York Times bestseller list by buying bulk of their own book and then redistributing them. It's really not hard if you can afford it. With her latest award, Michelle Obama and former President Obama are tied for Grammy wins because he also has two. The ex-commander-in-chief won in the Best Spoken Word Album category in both 2006 and 2008. Wow. And there are other, and she also beat William Shatner apparently. And I've heard William Shatner, an audiobook of William Shatner, and he actually gives a pretty decent dramatic read. And I'm like, do any of these people, Meryl Streep, Bernie Sanders, that she beat also for this, do they give good dramatic reads of their own books? Do they? Do they give their own dramatic reads or do they give decent dramatic reads? I can't picture it. I cannot picture them giving a good dramatic read, being a good enough voice actor to really deserve a Grammy. But of course, we all know these awards are all fixed now. I don't believe anybody actually earns any of these awards. I think they're all pat on the back. Here, we'll just give you a Grammy because you're Michelle Obama. We'll nominate you because you're Bernie Sanders. You know what I mean? Monkey says, funny you don't even hear about Bernie Sanders anymore. Yeah, he's kind of fading away. He's really getting old, though. Rodney says, oh, yeah, 20,000 digital copies sold to a shell company controlled by their handlers is a great way of laundering money while getting on the bestsellers list. Exactly. And Helter says award shows are pointless and stupid. People get dressed up, go to a reception that they probably don't enjoy, and watch people get lumps of metal that would be better spent as a doorstop. Hers is as good as a doorstop, but I was curious. I wanted to hear her do her reading to see if she really is any damn good at it. You know what I mean? So I did find a copy. I had a really hard time finding a copy of her doing a dramatic read from her book. I did find a clip. I'll play it real quick, just an excerpt. I listened to the whole thing. It's not horrible, but it's not a good dramatic read. It really isn't. I'll go ahead and run this for you here. Let me pull it up. And this is from The Light We Carry. So Get the cotton balls out. Here we go.
Sometimes you recognize a tool only after it starts working for you. And sometimes it turns out the smallest of tools can help us to sort through the largest of feelings. I learned this a couple of years ago when I mail ordered myself some knitting needles without quite realizing what I needed them for. This was during the first fraught weeks of the pandemic.
All right, let me just stop it there real quick. You kind of get the idea. The entire 6-minute clip sounds like that. Okay. There's no emphasis in the read. Um, it's it sounds like she's reading a textbook. You remember Seinfeld, George Costanza? He didn't want to read the book, so he pretended to be blind so that he could get an audiobook, and it sounded like him reading the book, and he couldn't stand it. This is very bland. She's clear. Like I said, it's not horrible. To be fair, it's clear. You can clearly understand what she's saying, but there's no emotional emphasis in it. To me, that's not Grammy worthy. To me. But like I said, it's all faked anyways. Zane says all those awards are bureaucratic nightmares. The best thing I've seen out of one of these award show is the Will Smith slap. And again, as I've speculated, that slap was staged. I'm pretty convinced that the Will Smith Chris Rock slap was a staged event. Again, 500 camera shots of the audience's reaction, one camera shot of the slap, plus the 2.5 minute delay to broadcasting, whereby that could have been cut and was not. I'm pretty sure it was faked. It looked phony, and also the bit where Chris Rock squinches his eyes and leans back as Will Smith stops and winds up, like he's like, okay, let's get this over with. Seriously, we're supposed to believe that? Unbelievable. Gary says she ordered knitting needles without realizing what they were for. Yeah, that's essentially what she's saying. And Zane says even if the slap was fake, it was still funny. Yeah, and then people ended up hating Will Smith so much that they have to expose his bad relationship in order to make people feel sorry for him again. That's what it came down to. That's what it came down to. Oh my God. Yeah, and one more here. Dragon says, I remember the Grammys being a big deal for me at 12, but now I hate the Grammys because it's a circle jerk of egotistical, mostly talentless celebrities. I agree. I mean, those kind of shows were never that great, but at least you got a sense there was some semblance of honesty in them. Not anymore. The Oscars, the Grammys, the Emmys, whatever you got, Country Music Awards, MTV Awards, it's all bullshit now. Hell, even the Nobel Peace Prize is suspect. Do you honestly believe that half the people that get a new Nobel Peace Prize actually earned it or deserve it? I sure as hell don't. You can't trust any of it anymore. It's the way elitists pat each other on the back now. Daily Mail, jumping to San Francisco. San Francisco's Democratic Mayor London Breed pushes for adults to be screened for drug addiction before they can get their $700 a month welfare payments amid the city's spiraling fentanyl crisis. You're just now getting the idea that you might want to drug test the people that are on welfare? How many years have you been giving those checks out? San Francisco's Democratic mayor is pushing for single adults to be, it's okay. Hold on. Single adults. So if you've got a drug addicted family, that's okay. If mom and dad are in the bag, it sucks to be junior. Is that the idea? Mayor is pushing for single adults to be screened for drug addiction before receiving welfare benefits amid the city's spiraling fentanyl crisis. Mayor London Breed is backing a pair of aggressive public safety proposals that would require roughly 9,000 single adults on welfare to be screened and treated for illegal drug addiction or else lose their cash assistance. How many people are on welfare in San Francisco? I bet it's a hell of a lot more than 9,000. I want to see. I want to see if I can even look up that number. Let me see here. I'm looking. All I can find is that they claim to service an average of 19,000 people a year. But that doesn't really tell me anything. I'll probably have a hard time looking that up. I'll save that for another day. But I closed the article by accident. My mistake. I didn't mean to do that, honestly. It's just now occurring to her. When you're dealing with taxpayer money that you're giving away to people so that they can basically exist. Granted, some people do need a boost. If that's all it is, hey, I need some food stamps to get by. Yeah, I'm a single parent with 3 kids and, I'm looking for work. I get it. Nothing wrong with giving the person a boost. It shouldn't be a lifetime career. Okay? And since you're dealing with taxpayer money, as a courtesy, you should make sure that that person is on the level, or do your best to make sure they're on the level. But they want to propose that single adults should get drug testing. Oh my God. She is also pushing to give police more crime-fighting powers, such as the use of drones and surveillance cameras. So you want to spy on everybody. You took away the police's power. I thought you were all for that, reducing the police population, defund the police. Wasn't she one of the people? Mayor London Breed, wasn't she in on that whole thing? Now you want to increase their power through the use of surveillance. What are you going to do with that surveillance? Issue traffic tickets? The police are a response to the city's ongoing homelessness, drugs, and property crime crisis, which saw a record 806 accidental drug overdose deaths last year. Indeed. Speaking at a January campaign event at a recently robbed shoe store that lost $20,000 in merchandise and damage, Breed said residents are crying out for more police. You took them away, honey. Now you want to help these people? Is your election coming up? They said San Francisco makes it too easy for people to access and use drugs on the streets of the city, and we need to do something a lot more aggressive, she said. Too little, too late. No, too little, too late. Zane says welfare was originally designed to help people who were so crippled they couldn't work, or elderly people who couldn't work anymore, not for Joe to buy crack. And Robert says, reminds me of listening to Peanuts with the teachers. Wah, wah, wah. Michelle's voice would make me pay just to keep her quiet. And then Craig says, YouTube is not very punctual with your notifications. Susan hates you or me. Probably both of us. And then That's Life says, great reset in full swing. Here it comes. And that Susan hates anyone worth value. Well, I guess I must be worth something to somebody. I'm sorry you get your notifications so late. Again, I get up at I'm up between 5 and 5:30 in the morning. And I usually set up the live stream at about 6 to 6:30 is when I do that. And so it is what it is. I hate that people don't get the notifications on time. And again, it should be saved in the replay so you can catch it again. So I still have 4 cats. I still have 4 cats in the room. Uncle left. The other 4 are still sleeping. As we get ready to wrap things up here. Again, this is at Coffee Talk Live on YouTube, as well as at Prepper University on YouTube. That's Coffee Talk and Prepper University. Please do subscribe to those channels if you have not already. Please do thumbs up if you don't mind. At Coffee Talk Live on X, formerly known as Twitter. If you care to join me there, I can put things up on there sometimes that I can't put on ScrewTube because I'll get in trouble. And Fistful of Radio, that is fistfulofradio.com, podcasting out of Atlanta Monday through Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and Friday at noon. You leaving? All right, now I have 3 cats because Miss Granny Smith just left the room. Special thanks to Rodney for making a donation to the channel. Much appreciated. Goes a long way towards helping to take care of the felines. And again, we're short on... What's wrong, honey? Come here. We're short on cat food. Nope. Something is spooking them. They're starting to run around. I'll have to look and see what that is here when I get up. And again, special thanks to everybody else who was able to join us here today. Hope you got something out of the conversation as always. And we will do this again tomorrow.